there's a course matching function. So a student can identify what part of Australia they'd like to study, the kind of course that they'd like to study.
Dr. Monica, welcome to India and the city of Pune.
Thank you.
This is Rizwan Syed from NRI News 24/7. Can you tell us why the Australian government is doing this study roadshows in India, and what cities are you going to?
Thanks very much. It's so kind of you to have me here today to talk about the India-Australia relationship in international education. As you'll know, the Australia-India relationship has never been stronger. Our Prime Ministers are in close contact. Our Ministers are meeting regularly. Just last week, our Prime Ministers met to agree, and our Prime Minister committed to a $280 million investment on Australia's part in the India-Australia relationship, and a good part of that is going to innovation and education. So we're here on the Roadshow to spend time talking with people outside of India's main cities about the opportunity in a quality Australian education, to really talk about the successes of some of our graduates back here, including one who's very local here in Pune, Radha Merchandani. He's the chairman of Ador Powerton, and he also has a business called AccuSensus. He travels between India, Australia, Singapore and France in his work, and he's a great example of the kind of global career that Australian graduates enjoy. So we're here talking about the opportunities in Australia. We're talking about the Welcome Back package that the Australian government has prepared, in which there are a number of small changes to our visa settings that will allow an ease of return for India as Australia's borders have opened.
So these students, if they choose to go to Australia for their education, what is the kind of investment they need to do, and how many students are you reaching out to in India for this particular event?
Yeah. In this particular event, we're not reaching directly to students, so we're talking with our education partners in each of the areas, but we do see a significant number of Indian students travelling to Australia. Australia's borders were closed for nearly 2 years, and yet we've seen a significant number of students who've been loyal to Australia, who want only an Australian education experience. And so 25,000 Indian students arrived in Australia between December and March this year in preparation for semester one.
That's a good number.
It's a great
So
number.
what is the choice of these students when they come to Australia? What do they learn, and what are the fields that they choose among whatever you have to offer?
So you might know that Australia is one of the world's leading in the reputation for quality of our educational outcomes, and so students come to Australia in all kinds of disciplines because they come away with a qualification that they can take globally. Australia has this reputation, and so it doesn't matter where a student ends up with their qualification, it's of great value and credibility. We do see a strong interest in Indian students in areas of STEM, so science, technology, engineering and math. We do encourage particularly students into engineering, where Australia has some exceptional quality institutions and programs, and where our outcomes are very strong. We're also seeing an increasing number of students coming to join in our health programs and health tech. And of course in Australia, we've always been known for our excellent management programs, our business programs and those that relate to IT as well.
Well, that's good to know. With this pandemic around and people staying back at home, now as they're going on site to do whatever they have to do, security has become a very important aspect when it comes to taking decisions for traveling overseas or traveling to any destination. So how do you ensure that these students who come to Australia, they are secure with their health, and also they have a social security, and if something goes wrong, what is the path that they can take to come back home?
So you might know that Australia is the only country in the world that has a piece of legislation called the ESOS Act, which is about supporting international students. A very specific set of legislation passed in 2020 and has been updated several times, and it has a real impact on the way that universities interact with students and the requirements that the Australian government puts on universities to make sure they look after their international students. So we do have a very structured, formal process that that providers are responsible for making sure that our students are okay. During COVID, actually, very few of our Indian students returned to India. The vast majority of them stayed with us in Australia, and our universities and communities took care of them. We have had great stories of international students making significant contributions to their communities during the time of COVID, but also many, many examples of where Australian institutions took care of their students. The Australian government too made accommodations so that if a student is affected by COVID or is caring for someone affected by COVID, the financial support available to domestic students was also available to international students. And this made a significant impact, I think, on students and their families understanding about the value that the Australian government places in its international student community.
Well, that's great. I think the students should feel safe.
Australia too is one of the safest places in the world for international students, and you'll see in a number of rankings that Australian cities always pop up in the top three to five, and you'll see all of our cities within the first tranche of safe and secure cities for study in the world.
Well, thank you so much. Now let's one more question that comes to my mind is now when you travel abroad, finance again has become a very important aspect. There are lots of financial challenges. So what kind of scholarships are you offering right now?
So different Australian institutions have their own scholarship schemes, and during COVID these were very generous as universities recognised that students were operating under significant difficulty. In Australia, though, just recently, and as a part of this package of commitments that the Australian government has made in the India-Australia relationship, is a new set of scholarships called Maitri scholarships, friendship scholarships. These are significant scholarships only available to international students that are full scholarships. So it's full tuition plus a living stipend of around $10,000 a year, I understand.
Wow.
And these will be introduced towards the end of this year as the process is finalised and set up. But they really indicate the value that Australia sees in India's top talent and our ability to be able to support the development of that talent and deepen the relationship between our nations. Scholars returning to India, having had an experience at fully supported by the Australian government, are ones that can become great champions for the India-Australia relationship as well.
So, Monica, when these students go down to Australia, they get educated and get their graduations and post-graduations done. How do you think that education and learning that has happened in Australia can help them rebuild India?
Yeah, it's a great aspiration of mine that Australia plays some small part in India's great ambitions. I have a number of ways that I can answer this question, and examples from the New Colombo Plan would be an example of where investment in education for students to spend time in another country is fabulous for the relationship between countries. But Australia's education system is very well developed, it's quite advanced. It takes a set of pedagogies and practices that are based on problem solving and critical analysis. It's an approach to education that we've become very well known for. And it's a different style of education that lifts students' ability to be able to innovate, think and create. And we hope that students returning from Australia to India bring these skills to make a contribution to the great ambitions of it.
Thank you so much. Finally, before we conclude this, if somebody wants to apply to go to Australia for their studies, how do they do that?
I would always advise that a student does their own research first. The Australian government has a website called the Study Australia website, and in that website there's a course matching function. So a student can identify where they'd like to study, what part of Australia they'd like to study, the kind of course that they'd like to study, and then they're given a range of options across Australia's institutions. Every institution in Australia is a high quality one. We have a set of regulations that ensure that that's the case. But students can pick amongst those to get exactly the course that they're after. The student fees are available in that search engine as well. The student can then get in touch directly with the university, and also there are some very high quality agents or education recruitment partners available, and certainly here in Pune I've met a number of good quality agents today, and students can use that avenue as well to find the best course for them and to make sure that the process of visa application and application to the university is a positive and smooth one.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Really kind of you to have me today.